Right, so we've been talking about chainsaws, chainsaw bars, and bar maintenance and whatnot. Chainsaw maintenance. You gotta clean those saws, guys. Clean them after every time you have a job. You know, that day. Clean them that day. Don't get lazy and let them build up with crud, because then you have things fail on you, like an oil pump. You know, people have their oil pumps go out, and then all of a sudden they ain't got no oil on their bar. Well, if you grease your sprocket and something happens, you're not getting no oil, at least this part will be smooth, right? And you'll sustain wear on your bar, but hopefully you're checking your oil flow each time before you take your saw out and use it. You just basically point the tip at something and watch to see if oil flings off the end and makes a dark spot. Then you know oil's moving. I like to keep all of the area inside of the saw, especially and especially the area where the oil comes out of the saw and gets capillary actioned into that little hole to run that bar. Okay, I like to keep that clean. So after a good bit of use, stop the saw, let it cool off a bit, clean it out with a rag, clean that area where the oil comes out of the saw. Sometimes your oil pump will not be able to pump oil, okay, because there's so much crap clogging up that area, and then you'll mess up the little worm drive on your saw engine, okay, and you'll have to replace that. You might even want to replace your whole oil pump and your worm drive, okay, but I never had to do that. And the 562 XP, I saw that a lot of people had issues, oil pump issues. Well, I can't say what their issue is. I've never had an issue with my saw. I keep it clean. I clean it up. I clean it up after every time I use it, and get all that crap out of there. Because if you have saw debris clogging everything up, you ain't gonna get no oil flow. The movement, it's all about maintenance and making sure that your saw is clean. If you don't grease your needle bearings, for instance, on the 562 XP, the center where your clutch mechanism spins, there's a hole. You pump grease through that hole and it greases the needle bearings on the main shaft there. Alright? So, some of you guys probably don't know this stuff. There's a reason why you grease the tip. There's a reason why you grease the bearings. There's a reason why you keep things clean. If you don't keep your saw clean inside the cover, then the oil can't flow. It'll just all get caked up and plugged up and whatnot. There was one time, however, that I was using the saw, and it was on that big tree, just saw and saw and saw, and I was tired. And so, I left it go a little bit here and there. Didn't clean it after every time, which is something I generally will do religiously. But you get tired, especially when you're older. You get tired. Screw it, I'll do it tomorrow before I start. And then sometimes you don't even do it then because you're still tired. But anyway, I did have an issue where I was not getting oil on the bar. So I cleaned it really good. Real good. Okay? And then I'm going to tell you a little trick I'm going to tell you a little trick. If you've got a lot of sawdust and other saw wood debris in your system, right? So your oil, and maybe you think your oil pump is not working. Maybe the the little worm drive, whatnot. Before you tear all that apart and replace the oil pump and all that stuff, clean it really good, and then look inside. You should be checking your saw bar oil, your bar oil, every time you fuel up. Okay, yep. Let's go ahead and top it off. It's using saw bar oil. Okay, that's real tacky, right? So it's thick. So thick oil to keep it on the bar as the chain's moving, right? So it's sticky, right? To keep it all lubricated. But let's say you've got clogged. Your system is clogged and it's not getting oil because it's clogged with sawdust, and maybe you think you got all that sawdust out but you didn't, even if you're blowing it with air or whatever. Here's a trick for you, is you get yourself some slick motor oil like Royal Purple. And what you're going to do is you're going to check that saw bar oil up in the front of your saw, and if it's about halfway down or whatever, you fill it the rest of the way up with 5W30 synthetic oil, whether it's Royal Purple or AMSOIL, either one, full synthetic. Top it off with that. Alright, get you the back end of a toothbrush, which you should be using when you're cleaning little parts and stuff. Right, get you the back end of the toothbrush that's clean. Okay, wipe it off the rag, get it down there, mix it up a bit. Take that out, then go ahead, close it up, make sure you full up on fuel, and then run the saw a bit, high revs, and cut a limb or two. Have something that you can cut on nearby. Generally, if you're doing work like that, you got something you can cut on. You don't want to just high rev your saw with no load. But what will happen is that thin oil, that full synthetic motor oil like Royal Purple or AMSOIL, it will push the gunk out. It will work its way through the crap that's clogging up your oil pathway. And that's what happened with mine. It wasn't getting the oil, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. My dad taught me that. Use motor oil. Back then they didn't have synthetic oil, but use thin motor oil, put a little bit in there, mix it up, and that will try to push that crud out of the oil pathways if there's a lot of crud in there. So that I did that, and it works. I watched this big blob of sawdust, caked sawdust, which was like looked like a couple of plugs of chewing tobacco flew out the saw when I started revving it, getting ready to cut it. You know how you kind of just rev it a couple times to get things moving, get the oil flowing and whatnot. Well, I revved it a couple of times, and I saw this plugs of sawdust and bar oil flying out. So it cleared it. That thin oil cleared that out. And then I went ahead and I bucked a few pieces of wood, and then got the bar oil down, because it goes pretty fast when it's thin. Okay, and it will coat. Since it's full synthetic, it will coat your bar. It doesn't stick to it, but it will coat it because it's synthetic, right? So anyway, it will go quickly. So you run the saw just a bit, and then you take it, shut it down, open it back up, and then look, and you'll see it's gone down again because it moves out quickly. So if you got the plug out, it will have gone down, and the bar will be wetter than usual because of the thin synthetic motor oil, right? So you go ahead and you can either dump that out into a container, okay, or you can just top it off with regular bar oil and then, you know, close it back up and watch it regularly until you've worked all of that thinner oil out of your bar mix, all right, out of your bar oil. And that's what I did, and now mine moves oil real good, no problems. So sometimes it's just a clog, sometimes it's not your oil pump. All right, because the oil pump on a chainsaw kind of it works. It's a mechanical device, and it all works kind of like how mechanical fuel pumps used to work on a car. You used to have mechanical fuel pumps on a car, not electric. So the engine running on a car would actually pump its own fuel to make it run, right? And this is the way chainsaw works with oil. It pumps its own oil to lube the bar. So that's another thing. My hand's a little bit greasy there, touching that bar. Here's my current harness. This is a Buckinghan Ergovation. I got this a number of years ago. It's a good one. They don't make it no more. Got a couple of high capacity carabiners here. This one's like 70 KN steel. Right. All of my tie-in stuff for my lifeline, I use steel. Alright, steel, not aluminum, because the steel one, if you accidentally get side loaded or whatever, the steel, your main tie-in should be steel, because it can take all that extra stuff that an aluminum carabiner may not be able to. Now this is a super lock by Black Diamond. They used to make these years ago, and I used to use this when I was rock climbing and ice climbing and stuff. But I use it also as just another carabiner because it's fun. It's different. It has 2 or 3 locks. I think. Okay, auto locking, and then there's a double lock feature. They quit making that. I don't know why, but it's a cool carabiner. I put a bridge on this with some Samson rope. What I did is I ran that rope. I got a stopper knot over here, and then I put we call it over the end there. I singed the end, and I put also the stuff you use for like wire, and then I use a heat gun on there on each end. Heat shrink. Yeah. Alright, get quiet. So, we got this Samson, I think it's Samson, can't remember which one though. It's a Samson rope, it's arborist rope, 12.7 or 13 millimeter. It's pretty heavy duty rope, good for over 6,000 pounds, 7,000 pounds, something like that. Anyway, it got me a piece. I run it through the D-ring here on the side of the saddle of the harness, and through the part that attaches to the harness down there, not the round part, but this part. So I just run it through there. I ran it through this D-ring, and then this D-ring, and then this side one over here. So your side D-rings are your flip line basically your flip line D-rings, redirects, things like that, right? So anyway, I ran that through there. Then I got a stopper over here on this side. I don't remember the name of that knot. Been too many years. But then the only issue I had with this harness is that this section here on the top part for the waist moved around too much on both sides. And so what I did is I took my sewing machine with some T60 thread, and I put a box stitch there on each side to kind of just hold that in place on each side there. Where is it? There it is. And then this has like a swing seat on the bottom, so you could relax a bit. It does not have individual legs. It's got an actual seat that goes underneath your thighs, and then you bring these heavy-duty straps up to keep you in the seat, right? It's a nice harness, and I've used it a lot. But if I were going to buy a brand new one nowadays, I would buy a Camp. Camp makes one. Tree something or other. Can't remember what it's called. That's a heck of a nice looking harness. It's ANSI certified, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, let you go with that. See you later.